49, Women in Design, and tonight we have
Katja.
come back in a little bit and we'll be live streaming the whole session. See you soon.
Hello. Welcome to ThoughtWorks. To kick things off, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. So we're standing on Gadigal country, and I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional owners, and acknowledge the elders past, present and future. Now for some boring pandemic information. Hopefully you've all either scanned the QR code and entered your personal details in the online form, or you might have seen in the meetup that we sent out a message with a link to the online form. So hopefully none of us are affected, but if any of us are, then we'd like to let you know. So that's the purpose of the form. Has everyone signed it? You all know about that? Okay, hand sanitizer is good. And the really good news is we have toilet paper. But please don't take it with you. 4 squares each.
Thanks, Kate. So also want to thank ThoughtWorks as our host and sponsor and their ongoing support. And the SydDT organising team, which is Zoe, Kate, Kingsley, Lucas and James, who aren't here tonight, and myself. So we volunteer and put this together every month, which is a bunch of fun. And we're really lucky this month to have 4 awesome designers who all happen to be women and align with the International Women's Day week, which we're a little bit late for, but continue the celebration for the month. So up first we've got MC.
Woo! Woo! Woo!
So MC's actually everyone's going to share a bit about their story and how they got here and things they learned along the way. And so I'm going to stop talking and get out of the way and let them do their awesome thing.
Woo! Hello everybody. I've got many things, so I don't know how this is going to go, let's just be honest. So hi, I'm MC and I've worked in and around product and design and things for about the last 16 years. And give me that, I'll be your clicker. I love you. Okay. So I've in the nod. I'll do that. Okay. I'm going to stand up for it. So I've worked on many things. I worked on the Westpac website. I've worked in RANDS. I've worked at IAG on every single insurance application form you could possibly think of. And today I manage a really large, awesome, incredible team of product designers at the ABC who work on every single product I hope that you do have, or if you don't have, you are starting to use, such as iView, J, News, etc., etc. And we're also starting to bring research in-house, which I'm super excited about, because when I first started we didn't, and now we do, so that's really great. I want to thank this awesome group of ladies who I'm speaking with tonight. I'm incredibly intimidated by their experience and have followed them for many years, so I feel kind of a bit like a fraud, but the whole talk's about not feeling like a fraud, so I'm going to put that aside as well. And I'm also going to put aside the fact that the last time I talked in public, I completely and utterly bombed. I bombed so badly that I walked out of the conference and I thought maybe I didn't bomb, and then I got some eye contact with people and no, I totally did So my talk is in 4 parts: the junior years, the mid years, the leadership years, and the horrid time that was. And I hope to give everybody some actionable things to take away. So these are the junior years. I started my career over 16 years ago, as I said, and I was in a really, really junior role. But I really, really, really wanted to be more senior. I really wanted someone to know that, and I really wanted someone to just come up and give me a promotion. I just sat around waiting for that promotion, day after day, hoping that someone would see me and they would just give me a promotion. but they didn't. And it was probably a conversation with my sister, because she's a massive academic, where she was probably saying to me, you need to do more, because I didn't go to year 12, and so I had this bit of a chip on my shoulder that actually, I would never go to uni because I never went to year 12. And she was like, just apply and go. And I did, and that was where I started my academic career, and I started as a business degree, and then I finished with a master's in digital communication and culture, and at some point I hope to do my PhD. So I went to uni, and I was also working, and still hoping for that promotion, but I was starting to show people that I had more capability. I was starting to show people that I could do more, and I was starting to show myself that I could do more. I broadened my knowledge, I experienced more things, and I just started to really, really believe in myself, and lo and behold, I got promoted. So these are my first lot of lessons. If you believe you can do more, invest in yourself. Find a course, a class, a group, push yourself. Oh, I didn't change laser. By doing things that build your confidence, it will radiate out of you like laser beams. And even if it doesn't help you in your current role, learning actually never hurts. And if you don't invest in yourself, why would anyone else? And this is a point that one of my bosses said to our big group one day after we got very bad employee survey results where everyone was like training. And he said, look, managing your career is your up to you. And I really believe that. Managing your career and your learning and your growth is your own gift to yourself, and don't rely on anybody else. Part 2. The meetings. So I was promoted. Like that cat, I suddenly was climbing the ladder on the stairs. And suddenly I was able to be part of this whole new world. But I wanted it and wanted it and wanted it, and then I got there and I didn't have a fucking clue what I was doing. I was really lucky. I worked at a place that had a really strong mentoring program, and that was where I understood what a mentor was, and I was actually given a mentor, and that was amazing. But I'm a bit of an overachiever, and so I found 3. And the one lesson I had here is treat mentors like a business relationship rather. Don't go to them, as I did in the beginning, as a counselling session, because no one has that time, no one has that energy. So the big lesson I learned at this point is if you work with your mentors and you treat them with a problem and solution kind of approach, you will actually get more out of it, and those mentors will stay with you for a lot longer. The ones that you go to with kind of an emotional need, that's not what that relationship's for. And I think I learned that, and now I try and say that to people that I mentor, is that this is a different relationship. It's a new relationship. So my mentors helped me. They gave me the context. I had a very senior exec, so I was working in finance, and she worked in a really senior role in finance, and she just was able to give me some context about the environment that I didn't understand. So that was really great. I learned how to debate with someone in a more senior position, and I also learned how to articulate myself better. I got better language. I was given better language to use than the language that I was using, and that was really important to me. And it also helped me grow and see my blind spots. And this is another really big key thing, which is my boss could tell me my blind spot. My husband probably try to tell me about my blind spots. My friends can tell me about my blind spots, my sisters, but mentors telling you about your blind spots, I feel like is a really safe space to learn about those blind spots, and so that was something that my mentors gave me. They helped me learn and grow, and they encouraged me to be a mentor, so it was all very great. Fine. So takeaways, find yourself a mentor here, or even at IXTA, where there's a really great mentoring program. Treat your mentor relationship as a business, more than a counselling session. Mentors can provide help and context and unbiased support, and they can be a safe place to learn and be a mentor. If you are not being a mentor and you've been mentored, then you actually owe it to your community. Okay, part 3. I was headhunted. This is so exciting. I was given an opportunity, and I was rung up, and I got this great call, and you should apply for this job, and I was like, yes, it's going to be a bucket load of money. Yes, I'm going to apply for the job. I applied for it, I got it, and then I completely shut myself. I was leading a team bigger than I had in a discipline I didn't understand, and given an opportunity and I was given this opportunity I didn't quite know what to do. But this boss, and I had the privilege of saying this to him the other week, that he saw me. He saw my potential before I saw it. He supported me when I was wobbly, and he let me see myself in a whole brand new light. He gave me enough rope and enough encouragement to see me achieve. And when imposter syndrome hit, which it still does, and when I felt like a fraud, he helped me snap out of it. He gave me a new dialogue to use. And truly, it was one of the most incredible steps in my career. It changed the course of my life. And that has impacted the way that I treat my team and the way that I manage people. The big lesson here was nurturing someone never fails. They might leave you because they've outgrown their role, but it never fails the person. Being in leadership is fun and it requires resilience and flexibility and collaboration and energy. God. It's hard. Oh, but I can't. Being a leader means being active in growing teams and diverse teams, and I guess that's the whole thing. I'm now in a position that I can really grow diverse teams, and for me, how I do that is I try to bring in a team that represents Australia, working at the ABC, that's super important, but being an Australian is super important, being in a leadership role is super important. So I try and bring in very diverse teams, and for me at the moment, my focus is women, and also making sure that my team is more culturally diverse. And being a leader is being human, and it has the ability to provide people with enough hope, enough guidance, support, etc. Part 4. Oh, takeaways. Here we go. If you see someone and you can nurture them to achieve more, it's the greatest gift you'll ever give. Imposter syndrome is real. Quieten your mind. Nurturing someone will never fail them. Being a leader means speaking up. I've had to speak up more than I thought I would have to about women and diversity. And being a leader means you have the ability to lead those around you and give them what they need. Part 4. The shit zone. So not everything in my career has been rosy. It feels like a very, very easy thing that I've had, but periods of my career have been completely shit, horrible and disgusting. But one experience that stands out to me is that I had a leader and he really empowered those around me not to be very nice to me. I had this really terrible experience where I didn't actually know what was going on. I knew something was going on, but I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't understand what was happening, and I felt terrible, and the anxiety was crushing. It killed me. It was really hard, and it was probably the greatest lesson I ever learned as a leader, is that you may not personally like everybody in your team, but your job as a leader is to lead them. If they're doing the job, and they're doing the job well, that is your number one job. And if you're in that situation and someone is treating you like that, your gut will know, and you need to go. And I only had that recognition. I only had that when I looked at my daughter and I said to myself, would I let anyone treat her the way that I'm being treated? And I have to say that was an amazing moment, because I knew right then and there what I had to do. But also it meant that I had to find out how much I was worth financially, because it's a really hard discussion to go into something when you're feeling like shit and asked for more money. So for me, it was super important that I went into a situation and I was really empowered and understood where I needed and what I needed to be asking for. And it's really weird, because the other day I got a report on my desk and it shows that women are still getting paid less than men in our industry, and I think that is absolutely terrible at this time. So make sure that if you are in that situation, you are leading, make sure you ask for your male equivalent in salary, not the female, because that's still about 30% less. Anyway, that was a shit zone. So if you're a leader, your job is to lead, and if you aren't being respected, know your worth and leave, and your gut will tell you, and you will know. And summary, here we go. Ask for help, and that was the thing when I reflected on my talk. Everything I did was asking for help. I've just basically not shut up for about 16 years asking people for help. So from a course, a mentor, a leader or peer, don't let your work define you, but know what you want out of it. When you go to work, know what you're worth and get paid for it. Managing your career is your own. And the people, this is something that came out the other day when I asked my team to go around the room and say who was the most inspiring woman in their life. And I have to say, like, nearly all of my team mentioned their mum being the most important person in their life, and one person in the team, whose mum has passed away, spoke about how important their mum was. And I was like, that is so important. So your family is the most important asset that you have in your life. Know when to put your phone down. I know it has nothing to do with the talk, but it really resonated with me on Monday. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, MC. I'm really lucky to have known and encountered as friends pretty much everyone here for over a decade, and proud of the journeys you've all been on. It's been awesome. So we're going to save the questions kind of for a combined one at the end. Next up, we have Sam Ezra, who's a business designer at Telstra. Senior business designer.
Hello, everybody. Okay, so that's how I'm supposed to be feeling. That's how I thought I would be feeling. I'm actually feeling a bit terrified, but that's how I really want to be feeling. Because I am actually so honoured to be having been asked here to speak tonight. Look at your face, you're so cute. Absolutely honoured. I've been coming to this meetup for probably, I think my first one was February 2018. I think it's an awesome community, so thank you, Ben and Zoe and all of the team, Kate, for continuing to put it on, and also ThoughtWorks. We love it. Also acknowledging these lovely ladies, thank you so much for being so awesome. And I actually thought I was going first, so I originally was saying I'm so pleased to be going first because I don't want to be following in your footsteps, but there we go, you set the tone, so thank you for that, that's awesome. Alright, so we're going to keep things pretty simple tonight. I am going to tell you a story, and that story is going to explain what my Year 3 primary school teacher, the Black Eyed Peas, one of the most recognisable tech companies in the world, and also A Little White Lie have to do with my journey to the land of design thinking. See what I've done? I know, there are some nerds out there. I love it, I love it. So before I kick off though, a little bit of context. So as Ben mentioned, I do work for Telstra. I think we're now senior service designers instead of business. We keep changing our title, but effectively what I do is use human-centered design to solve complex problems, to reimagine the experiences of our very diverse customer base, and try and apply that to our very broad range of products and services. So what does that mean? For example, today I had a co-design session with a customer where we tried to imagine what 5G might look like in the future in the retail space. I got back from Brisbane yesterday. We were working with myself and Enrique, that guy there, he's a legend. We were working together with a bunch of enterprise customers, different industries all over the place, trying to explore barriers to innovation and collectively solve that. So that was kind of cool. So that's an example of a couple of things we do, just to give you some context. So before I start on my story though, I do want to point out that while I consider myself to be a qualified and experienced practitioner and also a teacher of human-centered design, I'm actually not formally trained as one. So, how did I get here? Let's start with the teacher. So picture this, it's the 80s, clearly the late 80s because youth. And there's a bunch of super excited 8-year-olds that are waiting to audition for the role of this amazing girl. She is a robber-fighting, independent, kick-ass female protagonist in a children's book by Livy Hawthorne, Australian author. Probably nobody reads it anymore because it was around in the 80s. But anyway, a bunch of excited 8-year-olds. We auditioned for the part because it's been turned into a play. Can you guys guess who got the part? You. Yeah, me. I'm still chuffed about it so many years on. Come on, you've got to keep track of those achievements, right? And so when my year 3 teacher told me about it, she also told me about this place called NIDA. Has anyone heard of NIDA? Yeah, National Institute of Dramatic Arts. Spoiler alert, I did not go there. But she told me about it and I got super excited and I had a goal. And that goal lasted me for the next 10 years. I was going to be an actress, I was going to perform on the stage, I was going to go to NIDA, and then I turned 18 and I probably completely changed my mind. Decided I wanted to do something else. However, in that 10-year period, I got a lot of performance training. And so that meant that I could learn to improvise, I learned to somewhat stand on a stage and not look terrified. Is that working? Yes. Excellent. Learn to breathe from the diaphragm, although I'm not doing it right now. So I learned a whole bunch of stuff that became very important later on. Now I run a whole lot of workshops where I stand in front of scary men in suits quite often and ask them to do things like write on post-it notes with Sharpies, and they look at me like I'm crazy, but if you make enough fun of yourself, you can get them to do things. So that training was very, very important for that part of time. So moving on to a time where Motorola flip phones were cool. Is everyone too young to remember that? No, we remember when Motorola flip phones were cool. So I had a very interesting job at the time. I looked after an ARIA charts sponsorship. ARIA charts is like Billboard charts for those who are not from Australia, and my job was to find ways to create promotions between charting artists and carrier partners. So carrier partners are your telcos, like your Vodafones, your Telstra, etc. And in this case, so I've been asked to go ahead and run a promotion, and my main goal was to make everybody happy. Now, to break down who everybody is, we had the carrier partner, we had the record label, we had the Black Eyed Peas, we had Motorola, and although I'm ashamed to admit it because we didn't think about them very much at the time, we also had the customer. Who? Customer, what? So basically what I did, I was pretty new to the role, and I was like, I've got to figure out how to make everybody happy. So I started talking to them, and what I found out was that it wasn't quite as obvious as it might have seemed. So started talking to the carrier partner, and sure, while they wanted to drive traffic on their network, the actual execs were kind of a little bit more interested in being involved in something exclusive and showing off the fact that they had access to something that other people did not. You had the record label, which wanted to sell albums, like as in physical CD albums at the time, but they were just on the verge of a digital evolution. So the actual execs involved, well, they really wanted to make sure that they were seen to be involved in something innovative and digital and forward-thinking. And this goes on and on and on, right? We didn't really know what the customer wanted, but we assumed that they wanted, a good phone and a good price, and that they might like the Black Eyed Peas. And then the Peas, well, that was interesting. There was no depth to what they wanted. They wanted first-class tickets to Australia, they wanted an injection of cash, and they also wanted some items on their rider that were not entirely legal. Anyway, moving on. So what happened? Well, we put on a very expensive launch party. Doesn't sound like we're meeting any of those needs so far, but there were. It was a very exclusive, expensive launch party. Aside from that, it was populated with customers that had bought Motorola phones on the carrier plan. They'd also come populated with songs that allowed you to go ahead and buy the entire album, driving traffic on the network, making the record labels look good. You get the point. So this time in my life was all about understanding A, how to understand the needs of many and try and find that intersection. And B, it was about understanding that organisations are made up of individuals that have their own sets of priorities and motivations. Fun fact, this has nothing to do with my story. The phone that I'm talking about in this story was actually the first ever phone to be preloaded with iTunes software. Rumour has it that Steve Jobs hated it so much that he went ahead and created the iPhone, so thank you, Motorola. Speaking of iPhones, after a long stint with Motorola, I went ahead and started working for Apple as an account executive looking after Optus. This is a very interesting time in life. It actually was probably the most rigorous training ground for design thinking. I just had no idea about that at the time. So that training could be broken down into two parts. The first came from the fact that they asked me this. Hey Sam, welcome to Apple. What we really need you to do is sell a whole bunch of iPhones, but you can't change the price, you can't impact the marketing, you can't give your carrier marketing dollars, and by the way, even if you have a coffee with your customer, it could be considered a bribe. Anyone in sales? Yeah, okay. Hard ask, yeah? Yeah, okay, Telstra sales, go you. Talk to you later. So it was a really hard ask, but luckily Apple did not hang me out to dry. What they did do was teach me about ways to access a whole bunch of information, particularly about customers, a lot of data, and to take that data to the carrier and co-design propositions that made very happy customers, and that's as in the end user, and therefore sold more phones and more plans. Anyone in design? That might sound like a fairly familiar kind of concept, yeah? Yeah. The second thing that they taught me, and you guys are going to have to stick with me through this one, is that the circles in a Venn diagram should be equal. Now, I know for a fact from my research that that is not mathematically correct. However, bear with me. Let me explain. Just a quick reminder as to what a Venn diagram is. So what do we get when we've got a beaver playing a guitar, a duck playing a keyboard? What happens at the intersection of that? Can anyone tell me? Platypus playing a keytar. Absolutely correct.
Who did that?
Right?
What is wrong with you people?
Awesome, right? A very dear friend, he's not here tonight, I was hoping he would come, introduce me to this, so he'll be chuffed to know that it made it into the presentation. So that's a reminder as to what a Venn diagram is. That was really self-indulgent. So this is a Venn diagram you guys might have seen a little bit more readily from IDEO, shows that sweet spot between what customers find desirable, so what they need or what they want, what is economically viable, and what is technologically feasible. Now, what Apple taught me is that as much as many organisations, in fact many individuals, believe that we're balancing the three of these, really and truly that's not the case. The desirability part of this tends to be shrunk down rather than a good balanced Venn diagram, which we decided wasn't a real thing, but yeah, stick with me. So the reason they taught me this is they talked to me about organisational structure. They talked to me about the way people are incentivised within organisations, and they showed me some of the things that really stop the balance from occurring. And it was a hard lesson to learn because we all think we're customer-centric, but once I learnt that, it was something I was able to take with me into the future of design. Oh, not going there yet. So, I know it's a teaser. So, we've got to this point where, finished up at Apple, I really want to talk about the next bit because basically I quit my job, I go overseas for a year, I have a grown-up gap year, I go and do stupid stuff like live in a house with 5 people and it's a 1-bedroom apartment and all kinds of fun, crazy stuff. But I couldn't make that work as part of my 4-part story, so we're skipping over that. And we're returning home from grown-up gap year, and we are taking a 3-month contract at Citibank. And that 3-month contract is just to pay some bills, and we're doing it just to like find a real job. And I get there, stop laughing, he worked with me at Citibank. We get there, or I get there, and I meet this bunch of people. And this bunch of people turn around to me one day and they're like, Agile as a way of working is really cool. And I immediately saw myself reflected in their nerdiness, and we became best friends. And one of these people turned around to me one day, we're talking about design thinking, he was particularly influential, and he turns to me and he says, Sam, you sound like you know a lot about design thinking. Why don't you introduce it to Citibank? This is the white lie, people. My mouth is saying, an expert? Sure I am, I would love to. My head is saying, you crazy, crazy imposter lady, what the heck are you doing? You don't know anything about design thinking. Which of course I did, because, you know, hence the rest of the story. So what happened next? I did everything in my power to learn what I needed to know. And so that includes obviously reading, watching videos, speaking to people, running design sessions at work, running design sessions at home. That's my balcony, there's washing, that's my partner. Sorry, guys. We almost got to be anonymous with the back of your head, but all those people can see the back of your head. So you can really get away with that. Anyway, so went ahead and learned, and not only that, I connected with a bunch of other passionate individuals like this guy, and together we learnt and we did everything that we needed to do to earn our stripes. So we created a culture, we changed the practice. This obviously went for more than 3 months. We spent the next couple of years building up a design thinking culture and practice within the organisation, and left behind a really awesome legacy over there. So, I've talked a lot about myself. What I'm hoping that this does is illustrate 2 things that might be more relevant to you. You have so many more takeaways than I do. The first is that reinvention might be closer than you think. So I don't know if any of you have ever felt that you followed a career path in which you got stuck and you didn't know a way to reinvent yourself or to make a change. And with design, I think that it's important to note it's like some other professions where there are many different paths to get there. And it's not to say that design doesn't require training and experience and expertise and skill, it does. But the path of how you get there isn't always to be formally trained. There are multiple paths. And so what I really encourage you guys to do is if you ever want to make a change, look really closely at the skills and experience you already have, identify the gap, and then work out what you need to do to close it. The second is be bold and get out of your own way. So in the spirit of International Women's Day, I think any of the women in the room have known that there have been times where there have been barriers to opportunities that have been externally facing, right? I've been in situations where I haven't had diversity on the panel of people that are interviewing me, and that might have gotten in my way. There's enough happening that is getting in your way without you getting in your way. So the point being is, if an opportunity comes up, try not to hold yourself back because you think you're not ready. In the case of SydDT, I jumped, I took the risk, and it absolutely paid off, and I'm very, very grateful for it. So I think you guys have had just about enough of me. What I hope is that you have taken something away from this talk, even if it is just the platypus playing the guitar.
You can say your own name.
You can say your own name. do I click to just get to the next thing, or does something happen?
No, I'm going to do some magic over there.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Do you want me to tell jokes while you do the magic?
Yeah, I'm going to say thanks to Sam though.
It's like your Venn diagram, that Venn diagram, Venn diagram.
I've got the desirability circle there. So, key reason I wanted to get Sam to speak tonight, other than being awesome, is to really highlight that diversity of background, and I think all of us have come through into our journeys and into your journeys, in very different, diverse ways. And that diversity of background is a key part of what I think makes all of you awesome designers, as well as being awesome humans. So, Katja Forbes, first name famous, so I don't know why I said Forbes. Katja's the managing director of Design It for Australia and New Zealand.
Correct.
AKA previously known as SIFT in Australia.
Correct.
And also IXDA board member, director.
Board, yep.
Now I'll tell jokes while I get your slides up.
Okay. So, what's the difference between a Zippo and a hippo?
Why?
One's a little lighter. That was my partner Graham's joke. Like, he's a solid dad joke guy. And every time he tells me that goddamn joke, I want to punch him in the face. So I thought, I'll see if it works. I'll give it a crack and see if it works. It's not. It's terrible. That's a rubbish joke.
It worked. No.
Okay. So I pulled together some slides this afternoon so that I would have something in the background as I told this exciting story. And the first slide, I was like, oh, I'll put a placeholder in there and then I'll think about it. And turned out that it was just kind of a picture of me and Renee. Yeah, man. Where's your timing? Come on.
The appear of like the photo of you, but it's not going.
The purple suits you so well.
What's that?
The purple suits you so well.
What, this?
Well, like the blue, I don't know.
Oh,
Just
thank
helping
you.
out.
Thank you. You're a kind individual. But just in case you're curious about what my name was and what I looked like, big slide. Hooray! Yeah, get rid of the chest. Yeah, definitely get rid of the chest. Thank you so much for having me along tonight. I am also delighted to be a part of this group of women who are coming to share our stories. It's International Women's Day week after. So where shall I start? Oh, I'm not gonna start at the beginning. I'm gonna start where I am today. This is me today. I am the managing director for a region, for a global organization. I have built and then sold a business. I am running a team. I think there's about 18 of them now. I don't know. I have to count on my fingers because I forget as they come in and out as we use flexible workforce. I really need an outlet. So I play ice hockey in mixed ice hockey league. It's supposed to be non-contact. Sometimes it's a little bit of contact. Sometimes a lot of contact. Sometimes they drop the gloves and drop the C-bomb. But he hit me in the back. What was I supposed to do? But I wanted to start here because this is I got an opportunity a couple of weeks ago when I was captaining the team. I usually go to ice hockey for no responsibility, but sometimes there's a power vacuum and I just can't stand it when people don't do their jobs properly and tend to go, I'll do it. So I was captaining the team, and as the captain of the team, my job is to, put people in the right places, tell them what position, get out on the ice, get off the ice, do that, stop doing that, do more of that. And one of my team, I think he must be in his mid-20s or so, he looks at me and he says, "Oh God, you're so bossy." And I was like, oh, thank you. And so I then responded with one of my favorites, which is, "I'm not bossy, I'm the fucking boss." And then I punched him in the face. I'm not lying, I did, but we wear face cages, so I actually punched him in the face cage, and then sent him out onto the ice. And so, if I laid it out for that guy, what he'd just done, and said, "Do you know what, that was really sexist. Would you have ever said that to any of the blokes who captain our team?" He would have gone, "Oh, but I'm not sexist, I'm a good guy." And I'm like, dude, it's so small. They're tiny, tiny things that happen on a daily basis. And so I didn't lay it out for him, but I just punched him in the face and felt better about it. So it all worked out in the end. But this is where I am today. And I have the confidence and the strength to hit a guy in the face on my ice hockey team, to say these things to them, and to smack it down, to call it out, to say that's not a standard I'm going to accept. But I wasn't always like that. That is not me. I know, that is not me. I'm not showing you any baby photos in this, but I did want to show you that at one point in time, I was not this individual. I didn't have confidence to stand up in front of people in this way. I was not confident in my skills and abilities. And so we all started from somewhere. So when I was starting out my career, I actually started as a broadcast journalist student. I was going to be on TV. I was so excited. Okay, let's really go back. Does anybody remember Jana Bent?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, so I was going to be her. That was my dream. I was going to be Jana Bent. I was going to travel all over the world. I was going to be on 60 Minutes. It was going to be amazing. And then I did an internship at Channel 7 Newsroom, and then I didn't want to do it anymore. It was TV in the early 90s was, has anybody worked in TV in the early 90s? Yeah. It was really bad. It was rough, especially as a very young woman in a newsroom with guys that were just out and out. "Oh, you've got good legs. Oh, I like your bottom." They didn't say bottom, but and it's just, as a early 20s woman, I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't have the tools today that I now have to deal with that kind of behaviour. I didn't have the tools for that, so I would, I'd de-escalate or try and make a joke out of it, or just kind of run away from it. And by the time I'd finished my internship with Channel 7, I was like, I can't be here, this is awful, I hate it. So I thought, okay, well, I'm a journalist, there's got to be other journalism. So I ended up writing for a magazine. Now this magazine was called internet.au. Anyone remember it? And oh my God, there's people here who know what I'm talking about. So these magazines we're talking 95, 96 here. These magazines, internet.au and the Australian Net Directory, were about, I would review websites for them. Like Antonio Banderas in 1996. I would go and review websites. I'd go to the websites, I'd sit there, I'd wait and wait for them to load. I would review the websites and say whether it was good or terrible or what was
Where's
good or
the under
terrible about.
construction logo?
Look, I thought about a GIF with a blink tag in it, but it was just too much trouble. So imagine like it's got blink tags down the bottom here. But that was my job. I would look at websites and say whether they were good or not, because in the early 90s, bandwidth was terrible, so people would not want to wait for a website that was going to be garbage. And so we would do this. We would print it out on paper, fasten it with staples, and put it in newsagents and sell it. And people would buy it. And that was a job, which obviously doesn't exist anymore. But this is how I actually got started moving towards what we call new media and the web and the design field. Was literally just starting to write about this stuff, and I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing. When I went into my first agency job, so I was going to put some logos up here of companies I work for. They don't freaking exist anymore. Like I work for Aussie Mail. I work for Spike. I ran the chat city function and messaging function for Aussie Mail before like anybody actually used that kind of stuff, other than like 5 people, all of whom were like the wizard. I'm not making that up. There was legit a guy who was like the wizard, and he thought he was the absolute benign dictator of everything online. Anyway, this is how I got my start, and I could talk about many things that happened to me in the 90s, including like working for Aussie Mail and other digital agencies. We were just running around like. We were 20-something kids with blue hair, no shoes, riding around on razor scooters, telling the CEOs, this is how it is because we understand the internet and you're old. Which I feel like that happens to me now, but I'm an old person. But this is how we behaved. We had no idea what we were talking about. We had no idea what we were doing. We didn't know how to run a business. We just kept going and building websites. I did Rip Curl's first website. But I had no idea of what the concept of scope was. So I just had more ideas as we were going. And I'm like, oh, I've got a really good idea. Let's do a wetsuit selector. And what we'll do is we'll have a map of the world with water temperatures on it, and then you say what year or what month you're going to go surfing in and where, and click on it, it'll tell you what wetsuit you need. What a great idea. And everybody in the developer team was like horrified as I'm doing this on the fly in front of the client. So they had no idea what I was doing. And I did terrible things. I'm embarrassed about some of the things that I did. You have to get me really sourced to tell you about them. But I did end up working for a proper company in the end. Sapient hired me in their first incarnation in Sydney. That was great. I just faked my way through the interview. And they asked me to draw a systems architecture diagram. And I'd seen somebody draw like a cylinder once for a database. And so I did the other bits that I kind of knew what to do, and then I did the cylinder, and then I just said, so that would be the database, and then I'd get the technical people to help me with whatever else had to get done there, because that's really not what I'm here for. Look, props to them, they gave me a job. But we're talking late 2000, okay, so you know what comes next. They sent me off to Tokyo. I was having a lovely time. And then the dot-com bubble just happened. 700 people got slashed in a day, and they closed the Sydney office. I was in Tokyo. I was told I was taken into a room. It was my first redundancy. And I just burst into tears. Oh God, thinking about it now, I'm so embarrassed. Because if somebody told me now I'm redundant, I'd be like, oh, okay, that's fine. Yeah, I can work with that, and I'll do this, and I've got plans, whatever. But then all I had was tears. And so just sitting there, and then the poor managing director, he's maybe I'll spend some time with Katja first. That would be nice. But they rehired me and shipped me to London. So, obviously I'd done something right, but then I got to London and they let another 700 people go. So it was a weird time. It was a really weird time, and I don't know who else was possibly working in the industry at that time, but we all felt very unsafe. And I enjoyed my time with Sapient, and I would not trade the experience that I got with them as a consultant, but by the end of it, I was broken on the rocks of the projects that I was on. I think I was plugging databases together for it was an NHS health project, like operational reports of who's stayed in A&E longer than 4 hours. I was like, I can't find the soul in this. It's got to be somewhere, but I can't find it. And I had great experiences in London. So I stayed in London for about 10 years. I worked for Yahoo over there. I worked for Thomson Reuters. I got my first job working for Royal National Institute of Blind People, where I learned about how the internet works for people who've got a disability. And previous to that, I hadn't even thought about it. So I'm so grateful for all of those opportunities. But London's a tough town. And while I loved it, and I worked in a lot of financial services opportunities there, it's kind of like that. So 2000s London financial services. This was a lot of the meeting rooms that I was attending. I was the only woman in the room with a bunch of dudes from the client side, a bunch of dudes on the sapient side. And I vividly recall one meeting where the client turned to me and said, so you're going to take some notes? And I was running the freaking show, like I was running the project, I was leading the thing. And I remember that's the first time I actually called out, and I just said, why? Because I'm the only woman in the room. And I was so proud of myself. But that's the first time, and it really sticks in my memory, is the moment where I was like, hey, I'm not going to stand for this. I'm going to choose, there's going to be hills that I'm going to die on, and I'm good with that. So I did come back to Australia after about 10 years. And my first, I did some contracts and stuff, and then I went and did some work with Commonwealth Bank. But it was like I'd gone back in time, coming from London to Sydney. And I'm not trying to be rude, but it was really behind here. And I was having to have conversations here that I would never have had when I was in London. For example, talking with an organisation about their design that they were doing for a website and telling them your colour contrast is too low, people with low vision, they're not going to be able to read what you put there. And the creative director saying to me, we're not making the site for people like that. I was so enraged. I had to stand out of the room. But there was also some great work going on here, and I started at Commonwealth Bank when there was like 5 designers there. Like now there's 160 or something, or 200 or 300. But that was where I also learned about hills that you're going to die on. I am so proud of this. This is a screenshot from today. Anybody who's a Commonwealth Bank customer, you can preview your messages and you can make them go away again. When I was working on this, they wanted to make it a pop-up box that came across the top of the banking and stopped you from doing anything before you looked at the message they wanted you to look at. And I was like, this is a hill I'm going to die on. No, there is no way that I'm allowing this to go through, because this is going to be shit for customers. And I remember prototyping it in PowerPoint. This must have been, it was 2011. Their tool of choice there was Visio. But I prototyped the interactions in PowerPoint, and I did a whole bunch of different ways that it could open and close and notify you. And through customer testing and showing it to people, I actually won the fight, won the battle, and this interaction lives in NetBank today. We're talking about something from 2012 that I designed. Yeah, I'm so proud of that. To be fair, like I'm a managing director now, I don't design anything. I do spreadsheets and I run teams. So this is from several years ago, and I'm still proud. But there's something there. You've got to choose the hills you're going to die on. You know, sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not. I've really had a fortunate experience getting involved in IXDA Sydney and running that collective that chapter for 6 years. That's where I found my tribe here. I was there at the founding meeting, so was Ben. And those people really helped me sort of find my feet and find my voice as a designer in Sydney. If I hadn't come back to Sydney, if I stayed in London, I think I would have been a very much smaller version of myself. So I'm really grateful for the opportunities that I've had being part of this community. And then I started a company by accident, because we were at Commonwealth Bank and they're like, oh, here's a big project. So I'm going to need more people, but I want my own people. And they said, well, we can't engage with you unless you're a company, because otherwise we'll have superannuation liability. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. So I made a company. Yeah, seriously, that's how I started my company, to avoid superannuation liability for the bank. The companies start in curious ways, and not all of them are like fabulous backstories. But then they asked me to do more things, so I found more people and more things, and I found more people. Then I had 7 people working for me, and I was like, uh-oh, I should actually start having to think about this. And over the 4 years that I ran the organisation, we maxed out, I think, at about 17 people, and then I downsized to 5 people, not from 18 to 5, but opened more and then less and then more and then less. I tell you what, downsizing a business, that's something that stays with you, having to tell people that you've done your best, but you can't you can't keep them on. It's a heartbreaking thing to do. And that also was another, crucible for me to just sit in and, hate on myself because I didn't succeed for these people. But that was something that I came through and I learned from it. And I also learned how to sack somebody who's not doing a very good job. And that's a really difficult and hard thing to do. So every experience that I've had, I've been grateful for. I got lucky. Well, no, fuck that. No, I worked really, really, really hard, and I put myself forward in 2016 for the 100 Women of Influence. I was stunned that I made the list, and came up with all sorts of very good reasons as to why I wasn't supposed to be on it, along the lines of, I don't think I had enough women apply. And I still don't believe that I deserve it or that I belonged there, and I don't know why they picked me. And I shouldn't, because I'm really good at what I do, and I'm worthy of that. But somewhere in there, and I guess everybody, somewhere in there, you just get told, well, there weren't enough women that year, that's how you got in. And because of that, I was like, I'm going to get a PR lady to help me with my profile. This is legit, my PR lady. Her name is Kerry, and she is fabulous. Glamorous. But what she's done for me is she's actually really helped me bring out all of the things that I know and find really great places to share it. Because in the 3 or 4 years that we've worked together, she puts me forward for things I don't even know that I'm up for. And I get listed in a global entrepreneurs magazine as one of Australia's top 10 women entrepreneurs. So sometimes it's just about putting yourself forward. I mean, I'm sure there's more worthy people than me that belong on this list, but I got on this list because I'm starting to look for people who can amplify the work that I'm doing. And you should look for people who can amplify the work you're doing as well. She's written and she's helped me write and publish 40 articles in the last year. I got published in Koshi's Business Builders this week for Project F International Women's Day promotion that I did. Last month she had me in CMO magazine writing about climate positive design. So when you've got people who can amplify your voice, you get these great opportunities to talk about what you know. And I know there's someone here who's going to start a blog, but it's about having a point of view and putting it out there. And this is what I say to a lot of the young designers who come to me. I say, have a point of view. Just write a Medium article, put stuff on Twitter, have a point of view, because people are going to go and look for your digital presence, and it's more than your LinkedIn page. I got to be the global board of directors of IXDA because I interviewed and they selected me. So that's the end of that story. I'm still on the board. It's very interesting being on a board with a bunch of designers trying to be on the board. And I sold my company in the end of 2018. I sold to Design It, who are wholly owned by a giant Indian systems integrator, Wipro. I have a lot of challenges with them. I love the fact that I sold, and I love Design It. Wipro are a unique organisation, but they come from a very different cultural background than me, and I think that I scare them. And a little bit, I do it on purpose. Because I don't really know what to do with me. I think their cultural frameworks are different. Their expectations of women are different, and while they really, really like to have me up there in front of people, sometimes it's like, go up there and do your woman thing, and sometimes it's actually really genuine, and I really appreciate that, and I can tell the difference. But it's a challenge working with them, and I'm slowly educating as I go, both on what design even is, and what it means to be truly diverse in your workplace. I get a lot of questions about why did I sell. I now get to say, rather than I'm just a 5-person shop in Sydney, I get to say I'm 18 and 19 studios all around the world. I have a global team covering the entire church of design, the broad church of design, and I've worked with pretty much every brand that you can think of. It's a very empowering thing to walk into a client meeting with such a behemoth at your back, and that was really nice. I was a sole director before, and I can tell you that's lonely and hard. And I really align with their values. We have 10 rules of thumb, things like better together, help each other, challenge our clients, make it radically simple, and my favourite, no assholes. I use that one. But I sold because I missed having a peer group. I missed having somebody who I could go to and say, please help me, I don't know what to do. Because you can't do that to your crew. It's not fair. As a leader, you can't do that to your crew. Bits of advice. So I've just got 2 bits of advice. So for me, my first bit of advice is, for God's sake, put the oxygen mask on yourself before you help others. Because if you can't breathe, you're no good to anybody else. And for me, selling my company, that was kind of that. I was suffering and dying as a sole director, and trying to be a great design practitioner, trying to do all of the things, and I was suffocating and I couldn't breathe, and I was letting my crew down, and I didn't want to do that. So in order to, resurrect myself, I sold my company. It was a great decision, and I would do it again, and twice on Sundays. Well, yeah. And the second thing that I would say is, if you have success, because I have had success, and I'm really, really pleased with where I am right now, pay it forward. So what I do is I make available 1 hour every week on a Wednesday morning at 9:30 to anybody who comes to me and says, can I pick your brains? That's the slot. If you can fit in that slot, that's fine. I'm totally happy to sit down with you for 45 minutes, have a chat and a coffee. I also have a mentor that I'm looking after, a mentee that I'm looking after, to help her with her career. And I would say that if you've had success, any success, it doesn't have to be giant, it can be just small things that you know more than somebody else. Pay it forward. Find a way that you can actually share what you know and help elevate and lift up other people and other women as well. That's the end. That is me.
Thank you, that was awesome. You said you weren't going to do any baby shots.
I know, but
That's
then,
not quite
I
baby.
was fine at
I
the end.
remember that
I thought
one.
at the
That was
end,
from
I'll
your
give
birthday
him
night.
I love my birthday.
Awesome, thanks for sharing. That's an awesome trip back to yesteryear. Believe it or not, I actually did have blue hair and a razor scooter and a puffer vest.
Oh my God.
Picture that. True story. Hashtag.
Photos are going to happen.
Later. So, next up we have Jodie Moule from Behaviour. And you're going to share your story of what you've been up to for the last some time.
Yes.
Over to you.
Thank you.
Your slides.
I'm going to put a timer. There we go. And I'll keep the wine on hand as well.
You can keep it in your hand if you want.
No, it's too much food. Thank you. Thank you. I think they were all awesome. I want cats. I wish I had the black-eyed peas, and I do have a hockey analogy, so I'll try and weave some of this stuff in. Thank you for having me. This year's Women's Day theme, Each for Equal, encourages us to challenge stereotypes and biases, so I hope to sort of weave some of that through as well. But I thought, as a first port of call, there's a lot of talk lately about it's going to take another 100 years to get where we all aspire to be. And I've thought about that. I thought, wow, 100 years. So to kind of try and keep positive, which is, if those that know me, over the years of building a business, I've always had to try to automatically think in a positive way. I thought I'd reflect on where were we 100 years before. And I came across this picture. This is from 1922, so it's kind of, it's not quite 100 years, but just indulge me a little bit. There's some smoke and fashion. And I reckon that was pretty fancy for back then, actually, I reckon. So this is actually a picture of my grandmother and her sister Edie. So that's my gran up there with the blue. And that's her sister Edie. Various cousins, and of course man of house doing the crossed arms, overseeing his harem of women. Hilarious. So something interesting about these guys is that they lived at Coolangatta as they were growing up, and they were two of the first female surf lifesavers in Australia. So this picture here is in the
surf lifesaving museum at Darling Harbour, and these costumes, risque as they are, were made by my grandmother's mother at the time, because there was nothing for them to wear. And something that's really interesting about this story is that women weren't allowed to be surf lifesavers back then. So this is like only 100 years ago. They weren't allowed to do it, but they did it. Yes, rebels. Now, there's a lot of writing on this slide, but it's worth having a little read if you get bored of looking at me. I'll give you the hot tip of what it is. So Edie became the topic of a lot of contention at the time, because she actually went ahead and did her bronze medallion one day with a bunch of guys. Good on her. But then it caused furore because they didn't know how to deal with that. So it's in the, I think it's in the actual annual report for the Surf Lifesaving Club that they said, well, yes, she met all of the criteria for having done the bronze medallion, but women aren't allowed to be members of the Surf Lifesaving Club. So we put it to a vote. Obviously it was all the men voting. And they decided that women could continue to not be part of Surf Lifesaving Club. What was even more awesome is that there's obviously a heap of women going through this at the time, but they sent her a letter and it said, to whom it may concern. They didn't even address her, which is just cringeworthy and hysterical. And said that she had met the requisite criteria, however, was not allowed to be a member and therefore could not realise the bronze medallion. Wow. And then on his deathbed, Percy Burness, who was one of those guys that was going through the bronze medallion at the time, we like Percy. Percy said that she was better than most of the guys of the day. Of course she was. So I don't know, like as I relay that story, I know that we're all a bit gobsmacked. I certainly feel the horror of that, and it kind of reminds you of where we've come to, which I think is a great thing. Like nowadays, the thought of not being able to be a member of something is horrifying to me. I'm sure it's horrifying to you all. Like that's just a standard thing that we all accept. So it's nice to think that we've come a long way. We needed to come a long way from that, though, let's face it. So continuing, I've been reading a little bit, and apparently there's more women than ever moving into having their own business nowadays. So many and varied reasons, but I think I can relate to that because I started my own business, and as a woman I think that I kind of escaped some of the bias and the stereotypes that might have been thrust upon me if I hadn't worked in large organisations. I think you need a sip of wine. Jeez. I've never worked for large organisations. I've only ever gone from small places. Oh yeah, that's me. From small places and then started my own business. So literally after a small amount of time, really, when I think about it and reflect back. We've all spoken a bit variously about imposter syndrome. I actually don't ever usually refer to myself as a designer. I'm a researcher by background. I kind of always think of myself as that. Yes, unite. But everyone's a designer nowadays, and I thought I'd take on a journey with some cute family photos of where I came from and help explain a little bit about me. So obviously it came from a line of women that were rocking the boat, which is great. I was actually born in Hong Kong, and I moved to Foster from Hong Kong. Foster, does anyone know where Foster is? It is gorgeous, right? But there's I went from the New York of Asia to 10,000 people on a small coastal town. And I often joke that I didn't even think there was any soy sauce in the supermarket. But there was. I'm being terrible. But it was quite a culture shock, right? And anyway, I actually attribute a lot of the person that I am nowadays, the values that I have, to that time in Foster. Because anyone that's been brought up in a small country town, has anyone been brought up in a small country town?
Canberra.
Represent. Yeah, that's kind of small. It's getting bigger. I feel like, tall poppy, you get knocked down and brought down to earth. You don't want to stand out in a small country town. So I think that there were some humbling kind of things that I learned from that experience that I carry with me today. And I then went on to study psych at Newcastle Uni. As you can see, I enjoyed the party lifestyle. Oh, by the way, that was me in my Year 12 formal dress. Woo, carrying on that tradition of fashion. As we all were with taffeta. Really gorgeous.
So I loved uni life, probably a bit too much. I stayed there for as long as possible. I did my undergraduate, I did my master's, and then, I finally got out into the real world. And I was sort of wide-eyed and unexperienced with anything, but thought that I knew quite a lot because I'd done a degree. And I've actually got to thank these guys for everything. I attribute a lot of the stuff that I know in business to them. The first guy is Mike Gallagher, so this is the colour photo. That was Innovative People Solutions. So I was a consultant there where we were doing a lot of assessment centres, and I was running and creating assessment centres and role plays and things that are actually quite useful to my career nowadays, funnily enough. But at the time I just started to think, oh my God, it's different faces, same like profiles. And I kind of got bored of it really at the end of the day. James is nodding, he's coming up later. I bought some bands. And then the next one, Craig Erie headed up Performance Technologies Group. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Performance Technologies Group. They were around in that sort of dot-com-y kind of day. You would know Craig. And this guy absolutely insulted me by telling me I had to get out and do sales. And I was thinking, I have got a master's. I am here to do like user testing. But anyway, it was the best thing he ever did because obviously you can't run a business without knowing that kind of stuff. And so I'm forever grateful to these guys for everything that they taught me about running a business and having a small team. And a lot of those things I think I carried forward. So it's that reflective moment where you think, I'm very grateful to them. This was some of the performance technologies. PTG it became later, thank God. PTG clan. So James, sorry I put you with a light beer, mate. And some of you might have known Ollie, Cecilia. There's various names and people that are well known in our industry that have been in those early days, and I loved it. I think that's where I became a workaholic, to be quite honest. Like I would regret the weekends where I couldn't hang out with everyone because we were having just such a wow of a time. And I often thank God that in those days that there was a less experienced client in this shiny new space, because as we were tripping over and grazing our knee, no one kind of noticed. So yes, that's the way it's meant to be. Have you heard of Jacob Nelson? So we were lucky in those days. We were lucky, I reckon. And then disaster hit, the dot-com bubble burst. Now at that time I was in Melbourne. We'd opened a fledgling office for PTG, and I went down with one of the directors. And the directors had a falling out, and one left. And the long story short is that we ended up trying to look for jobs in a dot-com burst, and that wasn't very successful. I often laugh that I tried to apply at Vision Australia. They didn't want me. Has anyone heard of Heiser? Yeah. Yeah, they didn't want me either because I'd worked at PTG, so I wasn't actually good enough, and which I was really upset about. And then my partner, who I originally started the business with, we were so upset that he missed out on a job for Suncorp Metway being an intranet manager. Anyway, sliding doors, right? So we then decided in a dot-com burst that it was a really great time to start your own company. Yeah, why not? So much to the horror of our parents, we self-funded because you couldn't get funding back then. No one would give us millions like they do nowadays. It's an interesting, wonderful time if you can get funding. But we sunk a deposit on a house. And it turned out to be a wise decision. We kind of just went, yeah, whatever, we're going to go forward and do that. And thank God when we got our first job with State Library of Victoria, because we were down to our last 1,000 in the bank account. And I'll never forget, we framed the acceptance, and I think it was a princely sum of 20 grand to do full customer-centered design and research into their website and design that as well. So we were like truly happy. We gave it our all, and I think they were pretty happy with our over-delivery. But yeah, that's how you did it back then. So Simplicit took up 15 years of my life. I've only recently sort of moved on, but we had 3 offices. When we were privately owned, we grew Melbourne, which was the mothership. We then expanded into Sydney, and then we also did Coolangatta. because beach, which was great. And so there was a lot of hard times. I think, like Katja says, you're on your own in business, and sorry, I need more wine. Take away the torrid memories. No, but seriously, I mean, you can't underestimate. I think that people that start their own business, there's this thought that, oh my God, you've got so much money. But I mean, what I remember is having a house that was worth probably $420,000 at the time, with an overdraft of $500,000. That was only just making, that wouldn't even cover the monthly wages. And then we got hit with a $360,000 tax bill that we then had to spread out. Like, you know, when I look back on that time, that was a pressure cooker. Yeah, so it was really, really hard. But I think that it was a little bit like the boiling frog thing, you know, like we just sort of, we grew with it and went, oh yeah, that's normal. It's fine, it'll be fine. So what actually propelled us to grow was having children. Like, I always thought to myself, oh, I'm not going to have kids till I'm 40. Anyone that's got kids, I'm so glad I didn't wait till then. Because, you know, energy-wise, I think I only just had enough energy in my early 30s. And never's a good time. But I think, you know, I was lucky in the sense that, unlike the norms and the biases now, like women are the ones that still have to sort of go and take the time off and look after the baby. I actually only ever had 2 months off with each child and went straight back to work. Now, I could only do that with help and support, so we're lucky we had the means to have that. It was parents, we had a nanny as well. And so I think I sort of whistled past those stereotypes, but I did get judgment from other mothers. And so I think that when we talk about stereotypes and bias, we have to be a bit careful. I'm trying so hard as I get older not to be judgmental, and it's a constant practice because we are so immediately judgmental as humans. And I think that in this situation, I don't blame those people that tried to make me feel bad for leaving my children at home. I think it was a system that was putting pressure on them to feel like they didn't have choices. So I'd like to see that change. I look forward to equality, where people can share that role, because parents equal. So there were times when it would have been easy to quit. I'm not really that kind of person. I'm just I think my learning was, when things get tough, all I could think about was one foot in front of the other. One foot in front of, it became my mantra. Sounds really lame, but that's all I could think about. How do I just sort of put a task list together, work from the top, one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, and not to get lost in negative thoughts, because I think it's very easy to get lost in, oh, the sky's falling. And again, I used to be annoyingly positive to a lot of people in our office, but I think it was a survival mode, right? You kind of have to teach yourself to be positive. I put pictures in there of normal life, actually, because I did manage to have a life, but it was very limited. I think that when you're growing a business and you're putting that much into it, I really ceased to have anything except for the business and family. That was the only other thing that we could kind of fit in. Somewhere in the midst of that, I also I wrote a book, and we launched an app, and that was just opportunistic. Like, I'm a really opportunistic kind of person. I always wanted to write a book. It was kind of a bucket list. I didn't imagine it would be a UX book. I just had more visions of Harry Potter, I don't know. But I'll take it. So SitePoint approached me, and the reason that the Cook app is sort of pictured with it is that SitePoint, if anyone knows them, is kind of like a technical publication. And so we talked with the publisher about half of it being theory and the other half had to be practice. And so how can we bring it to life for developers so that they can be convinced of the power of design and this human-centered design approach. You know, my behaviour design kind of dream was that the book would be written, the app would be finished at the same time. Like, millions of people literally would obviously read the book. And then their marketing would be sorted, because then they would go download the app and I wouldn't have to think about downloads. I often think that naivety gets you everywhere in life, like just that happy naivety of, yeah, that's how it'll work out. That kind of wasn't how it worked out. The book was excruciating. I used to have to show up to work at 4 in the morning. I wrote between 4 and about 11 if I was lucky. Then I swapped hats to Simplicit, and I did Simplicit from about 11 till 5, and then from 5 to 8 I would do the book again. And then weekends I was so stoked because I'd have Saturday and Sunday to do 10 hours straight. And I did that for about 6 months. Someone said to me, "Oh, I don't really like the middle of the book," and I just remember going, "Yes, that was a very dark time for me." It was like the middle of winter in Melbourne. Like, no, I don't think I saw the light of day for ages. It was excruciating. And anyway, when it launched, that was a real buzz. That was a nice achievement. I haven't read it again. I'm like one of those people that I kind of read it a few times and then shipped it off and then went, "Oh, I won't be able to read it again, it'll hurt." Just because I'm sure I'll see the things that I don't agree with. And so anyway, then the Cook app, that took another year later to launch. And that was, thankfully, oh my God, what a relief, it was a success because we did experience design. So you would be hopeful that we knew what we're on about. We really did eat our own dog food. We sort of put it through the paces of going into people's houses, and I self-servingly scheduled weekends where I'm like, "I'm just going to show up and you're going to cook me a favourite meal and we're going to chat." And they'd feed me and we just talk about cooking, which is really fun actually. I liked doing that. And then when we were about to send it off, ship it off to Apple, we're about to launch, they said, "Oh, we forgot to tell you that iOS 7's coming soon, so you might be better off to sort of just redesign and be one of the few apps that come out with iOS 7. And I just remember going, "Oh my God." So we actually made the wise decision to redesign it to iOS 7 because then it was one of the few. So good luck and timing, we actually had editor's choice, and that is like hen's teeth. Like, you don't have to think about marketing. I think it had 500,000 downloads in the first 3 days. Like, phenomenal experience. To date, it's not really loved because I learned through this experience that Simplicit and the Cook app at the same time, you can't have two successful businesses at once, so it kind of was the poor cousin that wasn't paying. To this day, we haven't earned anything off it, but I'd love to revive it. Actually, we'd be interested in developers that might like to come and work for some sweat equity. But yeah, if you go and read the reviews now, everyone's ruthless. It used to have good support. Now everyone hates it, and I'm like, "Yo, I am the support. That's it. I'm an audience of one." But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's still a great design. It's been downloaded 1.5 million times. It's got 800,000 recipes in it. So I'm really proud of it. I'd really love to actually do something with it now that I've got more time. We sold as well, like Katja. I think that in 2012 we'd actually moved the family to Byron because Byron, and we decided we'd put the family first for a while because for so many years they hadn't come first. They definitely were second fiddle to the business that was the very needy child. And so we moved up there, and I often laugh to my kids and say, literally, I was a Byron resident for 4 months, and then we ended up selling, and my life was on a plane. I ended up being 5 days a week in Melbourne, and only a weekend mum up in Byron, and that had its challenges. Won't complain about going to Byron on weekends, but yeah, it was very hard. It was hard for the family and hard for the kids, so that was a challenge. And especially hard because, you know, I was the worker. You know, I was the main one working all the time, and their dad stayed at home. So that represents a lot of challenges in society nowadays, just the general way we talk about things and the way that their friends talk about things, which I'll come back to a little bit later. So it's actually ironic that not until we sold did I sort of then be part of a large corporate organisation of 1,000 people, and then did I feel some of the bias and the stereotypes and the exclusions and that rough treatment that I know a lot of people in corporate Australia receive, that I feel like I was lucky to sort of escape. So that was a challenging time. Each for equal. So how might we challenge stereotypes and biases? I always tell my kids to be careful of the words they use. Like, language is really important, and you know, the words you use reflect the way you think, and it becomes like this habitual automatic thing, as you were saying.
Bossy.
Yes, bossy, but I love your response. And but, yep, I am. So this is more of my kids. This is a really funny story. So Darcy, the girl, is this one in the jeans, and Blake is actually a boy, but he's got long hair and he always gets mistaken as a girl. And this was a day when he used to get angry about it, and I used to say, darling, you know, that's just people's assumptions, you've got long hair, just roll with it. But, you know, when he was, I think he was 11 when this photo was taken, his ability to roll with it was not that great. So anyway, we worked on it, eventually to the point where he decided that he would dress up as a girl. This is his alter ego, Brittany. We went shopping on the Gold Coast, and then he was happily like, yes, we're sisters, you know, so there was kind of like, he was really riding that moment and loved it. And he makes a gorgeous girl. He's very pretty. But despite that experience and that bias and those stereotypes, I had this exchange with him. He's 13 now, but this is when he was 11. So he sent me, obviously because I'm away a lot, I get a lot of messages and FaceTime. But he just sort of said, you know what's strange? And I'm like, what, baby? And he's like, Dad acts like a mum and you act like a dad. It's like, and so I just sort of am always trying to be positive. Is that bad? Is that bad? Unique's good. And he's like, no, it's unique and strange. Now, and I think that what's really interesting is this is a child that has been brought up where the mother has been the main one working and the father has been at home. And yet he struggles with the way that society talks about defined roles. And he really struggled moving to a small town, Byron. All the mummies, stay at home. They're stay-at-home mummies. Like I often get asked, can't you work in a bakery, Mum? And I'm like, no, because I told them I'm directing a bakery at uni, so they're like on it now. They're like, there's bakeries in Byron. Work in a bakery. Mummy's not going to work in a bakery. But anyway, it's really interesting that despite his frustration at being the bias of, automatic, you look like a girl, he then is suffering from some of that automatic thinking that just comes in. It's almost like there's nature-nurture, but then there's how we all talk and how we all then frame things that then as a society builds up a picture in young minds. And that's what will carry us further or not over the next 100 years when we're looking to make change. So language is really interesting to me. I try very hard to be conscious of the way I use it. I'm always banging on to my kids about be careful what you say, because what you say reflects how you think, and then that's full of judgment or not, and it's a good or bad thing. But I think really ultimately we need to stand up and speak, because what we allow persists. And I think you all know that in this room. We've got to sort of make those tweaks, say the things, be brave enough, because it does take a lot of bravery actually to stand up, especially when you're a female. Because you get the sideways glances from guys, because you're a ball breaker, right? You're a ball breaker. You're not, wow, you're really strong and determined. It's the negative connotations that come out in it all. So I really think the next 100 years we can shortcut that and we can make it less dramatic as far as we can get there further. But we really need to be responsible for the automatic biases in the languages that we use, and then how we teach the next generation to accept or not accept. Thank you.
Thanks, Jodie. That was awesome. So, question time. Start thinking of questions really fast. You guys are all okay to come up? Do you want to sit, stand?
Stools.
You can get stools. You want stools?
Stools.
There one slide.
That's just a very short stool.
Don't give it to me.
Thanks, take it back. Get the tall one. Just try to make it short.
Oh no, I'm going to hide off camera.
Are you running the floor?
Of course. No, they can reject. Awesome. Thanks, guys. That was awesome. Another quick round of applause. So, question time. Who's got a question?
Yeah.
Shout it out. I'll maybe repeat or summarise.
If you could talk to your younger self, what would you say?
Everyone get that? If you could talk to yourself, advice for?
Younger
At
self.
younger self. Critical point, younger.
So when you're starting off
before yesterday.
I would want to tell my younger self, don't laugh the jokes off. Don't let it slide, because the standard that you walk past is the standard that you accept. Exactly. And I can think of so many times when I should have said something, I should have stopped it, I should have interceded, I should have said, maybe that's not the word you're looking for. Like, that's actually a really good one that I've got now when somebody uses like retarded or gay or, you know, something even sexist, and I was like, I think you're looking for another word to describe that. So yeah, it would be to speak up.
So I think I would just tell myself to treat myself with the same respect that I treat other people. When I was a kid, I was actually quite confident when it came to sticking up for others. I remember being in the playground, there was a girl, she was being kind of harassed a little bit in high school, and I knew what I was doing. I knew that when I stood up for her, that I was going to lose friends over it, but I was okay with that. But when it came to standing up for myself, I probably wasn't so good at that, so treat myself with the same respect as others.
I think that one of the things when I was younger, I probably wasn't as comfortable in myself and confident to be strong but not abrasive.
Oh, please don't use that word.
I think the word you're looking for is...
Aggressive.
I just got called abrasive.
Really?
Yes. I got called abrasive, and that was why I was not selected to do something. Because abrasive.
Not the hockey, because I tell you, I want abrasive on my side. But, you know, I think that what I've observed is I've worked with some women that are actually quite hard, and I can see that they've become hardened and tried to be tough because they're facing such... I think that, you know, from their peers that are mainly males, being they kind of have to stand up for themselves, and sometimes that can turn to a bit of an aggressive bent. And I think, you know, let's embrace what's great about women, because we need more of that at the top, but be confident enough to not have to get angry and aggressive, maybe? I don't know.
I think I'd just say, you've got this.
Hashtag. Questions?
Run it over to the microphone.
How do you balance work, family, girls pretty movement?
What was the last thing?
Girls pretty, like skincare, gym, like afternoon tea.
Yeah. Very important.
You don't do everything all at once. And also rely on those around you. I think, you know, I've got a little girl and I can't do it all. And so her dad does a lot, and her grandma does a lot, and friends do a lot. And I felt terrible at times, but you just can't do it all. And also the ordinary is great skincare.
Sponsorship deal?
I think I'm in that funny time where I live on a plane. I do actually, but a lot of the plane travel that I do it by choice, because my partner actually lives in Orange, 4 hours outside of Sydney. It's a long game. We sort of recognise that we're playing the long game, and we're setting ourselves up for, you know, retiring out there and being happy on our 36 acres of paddock, which will be something one day. I can't do what I do without his support, and he backs every play I make. I make sure that I carve out more time to be present with him, rather than, you know, in Sydney doing things. I will always make sure I spend more time, more nights in Orange than I spend in Sydney. But it's hard, and it's relentless, especially the travel, you know what I'm talking about. And I think I'm probably a bad example, because I'm a machine. Like, I just keep going. And my mantra is 5 minutes at a time, like not one foot in front of the other, just 5 minutes at a time. I'll do this 5 minutes, then the next 5 minutes, then the 5 minutes after. Brittany, who works at Designer, has watched me have a 5 minutes at a time, day to day, like from go to woe. Okay, I'm doing this 5 minutes, and in the next 5 minutes. So I don't think that I'm a particularly good example for it. But Alex Lay's got like my heart at the moment with her song "Don't Be So Hard on Yourself." Like it's like she's singing about my life. So I don't achieve it. I do the best I can.
So I feel like fraud because I don't have kids, so I'm just busy.
Me either.
Oh, okay, so someone said family, and I was like, oh, I'm like, am I the only one?
I
Okay.
have no idea how you parent and
I
do what you do. I
How you
don't know
do
how
it.
you do it.
That. But I'm also a terrible example. So this week I've been shocking at balancing anything, and I have had some like almost mini breakdowns, and I'm sleep deprived. But if I was practicing what I preach rather than not practicing what I preach, I studied positive psychology, and there's a few kind of little tools in there that I find really helpful. I think that as much as I, again, haven't done it as much as I should this week, meditation is incredibly valuable. But not just meditation, mindfulness, so just allowing yourself to be in the present moment, which is effectively your 5 minutes at a time, right? Focus on this rather than focusing on that. And there's some other little tools in there just around, you know, just sometimes when you're overwhelmed, it can be really easy to personalize stuff. So there's a little thing called the 3 Ps where you kind of balance between like what's personalization, help me, permanence, help me, pervasiveness, that guy right there, love it. And you kind of like set them on a scale, and you have to talk to yourself and go, you know, like how much of this is my fault, and how permanent is this situation, and how much does it like pervade what I'm doing right now? Is it sticking around forever? Is it not? So I use a few little tools like that when I'm doing it, but I'm a bit sucky at it.
Temporarily.
Yet.
It's not permanent.
Not there yet.
Yeah, look, I've had great help over the years with kids. I think that's the only way I could have survived with that. I always made exercise a priority. Like, I always felt like it kept me sane. So I'm one of those people that get up early in the morning and do like 6 a.m. run for an hour. That's kind of my meditation. I laugh when you say meditation. As I've gotten older, I'm like, yeah, I want to do meditation. And like, I'm the kind of person that breathe thing comes up on your wrist. I'm like, I don't have time to meditate. A minute, not even a minute. Like, I'm too busy for that. So, you know, it's constant evolution. And I think I'm nicer on myself nowadays. Like, if I have a week where I'm just too manic and I'm flying around, or I can't do stuff and I'm prioritizing kids stuff, I kind of don't be as hard on myself of going, oh, well, this is just 1 week, you know, catch it up next week kind of thing. Whereas I think I used to be a bit tougher on myself when I was a bit younger. And but the one thing that got me through, I reckon, is exercise. That just keeps you in an even keel. I'm going to try on the meditation.
I'll send you an app. Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Omar.
Oh, no, it's okay, sorry. You mentioned like no assholes. Does that come in handy with the toilet paper crisis?
I'd like to say yes. But what I would like to plug here is that we are... No, I will go there, Ben.
I know you will.
And then I'll follow it with feeling.
I knew you were going to say that.
We're a Who Gives a Crap subscriber. They're a really great organisation, doing subscription toilet paper to companies, to people in their houses and things like that. Because we're a subscriber, they put some aside for us, so it's very nice. And also, we help build loos for people who don't have loos all around the world by our subscription to Who Gives a Crap. There you go.
Agreed. Seconded. Not for existing members.
Subscribers. So, subscribe.
Sure, go back in time.
Yes to you.
Yeah. Yell it out.
Oh yeah. First of all, thank you for the talk. That was very inspirational. And as someone who does research, I feel like a lot of times we really focus on things that we can improve, and especially when we talk about this gender equality, we always I kind of focus on things that happen to me because of my gender. But like you guys, some of you guys mentioned specifically you're pretty happy to be at where you're at. And I thought maybe I could use some things that you guys are grateful for being a woman that brought you where you are.
That's a great question. I feel really privileged to be a woman for many different reasons, because I think that I'm one of a few sisters, and I think that they gave me a really good grounding. Sisters can give you the best advice and the most clearest feedback. But I also think that I've only gotten to where I've gotten to because of the women that have had my back. A lot of my mentors have been women, and I also want to say that a lot of the people that have had my back have been men as well, of course. But I think that there is this beautiful tribalism that comes when you get a group of women together, and I'd just say make time for that and find your tribe. I loved how you mentioned a tribe before. I definitely I have a lot of strong female friends, and I've got a lot of people that are in the industry that I count on. So I'm really, really grateful to be alive now. I'm really grateful to have grown up in a strong female-focused household. I'm really, I can keep going on, but I'm obviously I feel really privileged to be alive and to have the role I do, and particularly now.
That's like me as well. Siblings, man, they shape you. So I'm the oldest of, well, I've got a baby sister, but I grew up with 3 brothers. I'm the oldest. So I don't know how to hit soft, pull a punch, or take a backward step. And I would only have become that person if I was a boy out of 4 boys. That would just be part of my rough and tumble. But as the girl with 3 brothers, and also all my cousins were boys, I was very unique in my family. I was the only girl for a very long time. And so I can play tackle football. Like, I will play tackle football. And being pushed in all of my early life, I guess, to take the punch. I think it's really shaped me to be very, very strong, very unafraid of confrontation, which is probably why I get called abrasive. And I'm not rude. I'm just straightforward. And it's hard. And I find there are some cultures who struggle with it more than others. I find Americans really struggle with me because I will not capitulate to whatever softness they're looking for in me to make them more comfortable. And because I was a woman in the environment that I was raised in, that's how I turned out the way that I am. And I'm grateful for that. I wouldn't be another way.
I'll keep it quick, but building on the idea of tribalism, I think I was quite lucky. I've always been very male-dominant industries, so I've worked in telecommunications and in finance, and always been, I guess, the minority. But where I found other women in those industries, I've been very lucky to make very, very deep connections with those people. We see ourselves in each other, and those people have remained incredible friends as well as support through the rest of my career. So I feel very lucky that we could connect in that level and probably surpass the usual work relationship in that sense.
Thank you. I feel, despite the fight that we are and the conversations we're having, I feel grateful for the time that we're in, because I was raised to not question that I could do everything, really. A funny story, which is slightly embarrassing. I think I was 7 or 8, so that's my get out of jail. But my parents, to their credit, always used to say to me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I think my first answer to that, when I was probably about 3 or 4, was a racehorse. Why not? No? Didn't quite get the whole human animal thing at that age. And then as I got to 7 or 8, I remember they said it again, and they always said it, which I think is actually an interesting thing and something to try with the kids. But I said, well, I'm going to be a millionaire when I grow up. And they're like, oh, that's great. How are you going to do that? I'm going to marry a rich guy. Ouch. I know it's so bad. and actually they said to me, oh no, you should make your own money, darling. And I remember thinking as a child, just being silent and going, that sounds harder. Anyway, kids really know. But look, I'm grateful for being raised by obviously strong, intelligent family and parents that were supportive in my crazy answers and making me believe I could do anything, actually. So may we all do that for our children, boy or girl, or Brittany.
Any other questions?
Just on representation. So obviously we don't see as many women represented in strong and powerful roles, and that shapes the younger generation. It shapes us, the older generation, as well. But another area of representation that I'm still feeling like we're lagging behind, even when I see all-female panels or strong women, is women of colour or of cultural backgrounds. And so I hear these really inspiring stories of women who, you know, have done all the things that you have done, really incredible, but I still can't see myself reflected in that because there's a level of disconnect between our origins and some of the barriers. Like, you talked about having strong households, female representation in your households. I didn't grow up with that. I grew up in a household where my man was the dad was the head of the house, and even though my mum was the higher income earner, she was subservient to him. So while in this hopefully not 100 years of getting equality, like, where are the opportunities for us to start seeing women from culturally conservative or you know, that other level of minority rising up as well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, this is actually something that I'm really, really passionate about, and I'm working on as part of the Global Border by XTA, because to my absolute sadness, the refresh of the board this year ended up with, by the time we finished, 7 white people. It was a reasonable gender balance, but we have 7 white people. And I had many conversations within board meetings, which I can't go into too much, around the fact that it's not good enough, and the organisation is supposed to represent more than 200 chapters all around the world, you know, in more than 100 countries. We have it growing. India is a huge area that is growing in both in design and also in membership for that particular organisation, and we have no representation for that, where there are no voices at the leadership level. So the work that I'm doing this year, and I haven't even, because it's a big problem, or it's a big challenge. I haven't figured out how I'm going to do it yet, but I'm absolutely committed to this year actually working on diversity and inclusion and getting the right voices so that the people who we can get into leadership positions in our industry are actually representative of our community, and we can see women of colour in leadership positions, and making sure that we find the right quality candidates for that, because they exist. I know them, I've met them. Like, I go to India every year to run a conference, and I know that these women exist, and I know that they are quality and what we want on our board. But the work has to get done in the leadership of the organisations to actually really go out and seek those people and say, you're what we want. Because perhaps those people don't even know that their opportunity exists. So you have to actually go out and do the work as a person who has the privilege to make sure that you make space for those women in the areas. And if I have to give up my space to give it to a woman, well then 100% I will do that. I would give up my space on the board in a heartbeat for the right candidate who can represent our community better. I think we could probably, no, I'm not going to say that.
I've never known you to self-censor. This is a first.
You don't want to go there. But yes, people who have privilege must make space, and not only make space, but seek out people to come and fill that space and let them know that this space is here for you, and it's here for you not because of your background. It's here for you because you are the right person for this space. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, go.
Awesome question.
haven't done it yet. You can clap me when I achieve something.
I think it starts with us. I think that that it starts with, well, particularly us at the front here, but everybody else in the room has you know, has roles. The things that I do is that I ask my recruiter to make sure that I get people of a diverse background, because they exist, they're there. They just need to look for them. You know, they need to find them. They need to find them on LinkedIn. They've got to give them a call. They've got to do more, because the only way to get people to apply for jobs is to find them and get them to apply for jobs. A lot of the time where I have a job open, I may not get a very diverse amount of people applying. And so I'd say the thing is, it's just needing to get people there is hard, getting people to apply for the roles. And I guess I'd really be curious as to what stops people in applying, because the whole aim of the game is to have a diverse team, because that's who Australia is. So you can't have all white faces, because that's not Australia. So how do we do that? And we need more people to apply. So any advice, I'd love you to hit me up and to tell me what I could be doing differently in the job ads that we do have, because I'd really love to see more people apply.
I'll just add, I think that's all spot on, but it starts with you. You are articulate, you're strong, you've come from that background. You get out there and you talk about that. You've come from a personal position where that's very meaningful and that kind of a story, and I'm sure I don't know what you do, but I'm pretty sure you're on your way up from the way that you're talking about things and the way you come across. So keep on doing that, have an opinion and put yourself out there and push and rally like people, like yourself, and make a splash. I mean, I suppose when you bring it back to our industry and the stuff that we did, we got out there and had an opinion and took advantage of opportunities. Just do that, and I think you'll get there. You sound amazing. I think anyone would want to hire you. So that's my thought.
Yeah, I've got a job too.
Ask and receive.
Other questions?
Have you? I've got a question.
Yeah.
Have you come across ageism, the combination of ageism in the workforce with being female?
Yeah, I have. I got told.
And what did you do about it? Yeah, could you do anything? Have you got any advice?
Did everyone hear that? Can we repeat the question?
Have I come across ageism and sexism in the workplace? I applied for a job, and the person that interviewed me, I didn't get the job, and then he said to me later, "You didn't get it because you're so young and you're female. You know, I just didn't know whether you could handle it." And I was like gobsmacked and didn't really know what to do. Like I wish I was a bit younger, wasn't that much younger, but I was a bit younger. And the job was still open, and they did another count for it, and then I applied for it again, and I got interviewed again, and I said, "Well, I'm back."
And I'm a few weeks older.
And I mean that job wasn't the best job ever, but I did get it. But I think I got it just because he was a bit like, fuck. To be honest, but yeah, that was my experience. It was shit. It was so awkward, but it was gobsmacking.
I actually had a very similar experience, but I've been doing the job for a year. So I was coming up through the ranks and kept getting promoted, but unofficially promoted, and it was kind of my first long job. And so I basically took on the role of head of marketing, and I was doing it for a year. And they said, if you do a good job, then you're going to, you'll get the job. And so the marketing campaign I ran was one of the most successful that they have ever had, and we got that same feedback from our customer. And I sat in the office of my GM, and he looked at me across the table, and I said, well, obviously. And they said, no, we're bringing someone in. It's going to be a guy. We're bringing him in from overseas. And I said, it just doesn't seem fair. And he said, but how old are you, darling?
Oh!
Yeah, that sucked. So that didn't go down so well. But you know what? To your point, that's when I had my wake-up call, and I said, well, then if you guys don't value me, I'm not going to stick around. So I'm not sure if that's ageism in the direction that you were looking for, but hopefully that answers. Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting as you get older, you're suddenly overqualified, right? And yeah, that's a interesting situation that I have actually come across. So when you're younger, it's definitely you know, an assumption that you're not old enough, and you sort of spend a lot of time striving to look older and more capable. I always used to say that being underestimated was my superpower. And now, having gone through what I've gone through, I'm actually just interested to get out there and do the work again, because I miss doing it. And I've had people say that you're overqualified, and I'm just like, I just think it's a really cool project. I think I'd like to be on that. You know, so it's an interesting situation. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And you know, with boards, too young for boards, but then you know, not old enough kind of thing. And yeah, so it's ageism, and as you get older, I think is a real problem actually. I mean, not that I'm super old, although I'm 47 this year. I'm feeling a bit depressed about that. Putting it out there. But yeah, no, I'm not sure of an answer for that, because I think guys and girls suffer that overqualified moment where it's like, you know, we would like to take someone who's less experienced and we can work harder and pay less to. Like, serious. Not to be a downer.
So while you're all very youthful, you've had huge amounts of experience. Do you see things are trending in a positive direction in terms of these things, or the same, or where are things headed?
Ageism, sexism.
Sexism, being a woman in design, things getting overall better, or otherwise?
I've got to tell you, I've got feminist fatigue. Because I do subscribe to, you know, David Morrison's the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. So if you walk past it and let it go, well, you're complicit. But if I called out everything I saw, every bit of language, every microaggression, every time somebody treats me differently because of my gender, that would have to be my job. I'd need to get paid for that, because I'd be spending so much time doing it. I think that we have made huge strides. I mean, from the presentation that you gave, we made huge strides. But still, I think it's because we have had such huge strides against the most obvious of sexisms. Now it's a lot more subtle, and it's harder to catch. And bias starts very, very early. And I mean, this is recent stuff. There's a Barbie book that went out, and there's a story of Barbie, and she's making a game. Like, it's really great, and it's a robot puppy game, and it's really exciting. And Skipper comes in and goes, "Oh, Barbie, what are you doing?" Barbie's got her pink laptop out. "Oh, I'm making a game, Skipper." And Skipper says, "Oh, can I play the game?" She says, "Oh, I'm just doing the design. I need Steve to help me make it a real game." So bias it's really, really subtle, and it's everywhere. Sometimes it's very hard to catch. And I think because the obvious sexisms are now easier to see and called out, and we have men standing up and going, "Hey, that's not a funny joke," and seeing some of those really, really great interventions. Now we live with microaggression. We live with the man spread. You know, we live with our space being taken up. I play a game called Patriarchy Chicken, which is basically me walking down the street and not moving for the men coming at me. It's a really fun game, but you've got to be prepared to bash into a lot of dudes because they don't fucking move. But that would be how I would see it trending. It's better, but now it's harder to catch, and you've got to keep looking for it.
I have a slightly different perspective. I mean, I can totally hear all of that for sure. I feel like I'm heartened by some of the men that I have in my life. I feel like there's a bunch of them kind of sitting over here in particular that I work with day and night. One up the back. I don't know what you're doing back there, dude, like sitting there on your own. But we work very, very closely with them, and I've seen each and every one of them stand up when they have seen something wrong. I've seen them fight. I feel like fight when they've actually seen an injustice, and I love that, and I'm heartened by that. So I think that's a really, really positive thing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I don't need to talk.
Sorry. No, go for it, Jodie.
No, it's good. Thank you. Just like to hold the microphone.
Go.
Well, I think the subtlety. I think you're right. Subtlety. It gets more subtle, doesn't it? And that's tricky to deal with. Subtle exclusions where you're not. Actually, Emma from the F Factor gave me a great analogy the other day about who used to watch Friends, or maybe watches it now. Yeah, so where Jennifer Aniston didn't smoke, but she worked in the fashion industry, and then she started to pretend she smoked because she was missing out on the things that were going on with the people that were smoking and sharing stuff. And I see that it's a subtle thing, and so there is a subtle exclusion sometimes. And I don't really have an answer with how to deal with that. I think getting aggressive about it then gives us a bad name as rampant feminists, and so that's a hard one. How do you move through that kind of an era to push forward? Because you're quite right, the obvious sexism is just, we're all laughing at the fact that they're not allowed to do the bronze medallion, to whom it may concern. But, nowadays that subtlety, it's getting tricky to navigate with still holding your head high and being a nice human yourself, really, I guess. Don't have an answer.
That's all right, there's one there.
I know that was the last question, but we've got one last answer.
Oh.
The rest of the questions will have to happen at the pub, sorry.
I think there was something that we read in an ABC article that came out the other day, that there is more likely to be a John on a board, or no, John as a CEO than there is to be a woman. So I think we have got a long way to go. But we're on the journey, or we've all got to change our name to John.
As a career in stand-up gets launched. Excellent. Thank you very much for sharing your journeys and the story and showing what's possible, which I think is a really important thing. And it's up to all of us that it doesn't take 100 years to get to that equality. That's not acceptable. We need to do that in a lot shorter time.
Amen.
That's all of us. So thank you very much for sharing your story. Also, we'll be going to the Occidental across the road to continue the conversation. So come along. Want to say a huge thanks as well to our volunteers who hopefully you met. They scanned your QR code. And so we've got David, Claudia and Alex. So thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thanks again to ThoughtWorks for hosting us. Because of said pandemic, we're going to be pausing our meetups for the next little while. So we'll let you know when that resumes. But at this stage, we're missing at least the next couple. Which is a shame because we're stuck on 49. This is our 49. And our 5th birthday is in June. So we may or may not have a 5th birthday meetup. We'll see how we go. So stay healthy, wash your hands, do elbow bumps. And thanks again to Jodie, Sam, Katja and MC for sharing their stories. And we literally have to get out of here because the cleaners are about to turn up. So rapid exits, Occidental directly across the road. The regular crew will show you where you're drinking. See you soon.